Let's jump into the empirical part with a pilot study. The pilot study aims to provide field evidence for the negative main effect of Protestant work ethic on autonomous product adoption, and it does so at the country level. So for the purpose of this pilot study, we retrieved field data on countries' Protestant work ethic, based on the World Value Survey. This variable is denoted on the x-axis. We also retrieved field data on countries' readiness for automation, based on a report by the Economist Intelligence Unit. This variable is denoted on the y-axis. If we now correlate those two variables, we find a negative relationship. So in other words, the higher a country's Protestant work ethic, the lower its automation readiness. To test the robustness of this effect, we retrieved field data from another source, namely from a KPMG report on countries' readiness for autonomous vehicles. Here again, we find a negative relationship between the Protestant work ethic and this proxy of autonomous product adoption. Both of these relationships are statistically significant, as evidenced by a simple OLS regression model. And importantly, these relationships seem to be quite robust, even when we control for things like a country's economic status or a country's car ownership rate. So overall, we thought that these results are quite interesting, but at the same time, they also have some limitations. First of all, the sample size in both of those analyses is quite small. And second, there could be other potentially confounding variables that may explain these relationships. So in the next step, it will be important to replicate these findings in a more controlled setting. The next study takes the form of a field study with actual customers. And for the purpose of this study, we've teamed up with Thermomix, the provider of the smart cooking machine. More specifically, we were able to send a link, a survey, to all customers who subscribe to their newsletter in Switzerland. And this resulted in a large sample size of over 8,000 Thermomix customers. The survey included various measures, of which 3 are most important to us. Namely, first, a short measure of the Protestant work ethic. Second, a measure of satisfaction with the autonomous product, with the Thermomix. And third, we also included an open text field in which customers should describe their usage of their Thermomix. And this in turn allowed us to analyze this text by means of sentiment analysis. So if we have a look at the results, we find that, first of all, there is a negative relationship between the Protestant work ethic and one's satisfaction with the autonomous product. So the higher the Protestant work ethic is, the lower the satisfaction. And second, we also find a negative relationship between the Protestant work ethic and one's sentiment of product usage. So here again, we replicate these effects of the pilot study at the individual level. However, at the same time, these results are purely correlational. So the next step, it will be important to establish causality. Study 2 therefore aims to provide causal evidence, and it does so by means of an online experiment. In the first part of this study, consumers were randomly assigned to 2 conditions, which should either induce a high or a low Protestant work ethic in line with prior research. In the second part of the study, consumers were introduced to a scenario in which they eventually had to choose between either an autonomous or a non-autonomous version of a product, more specifically between a robotic vacuum cleaner and a manual vacuum cleaner. So, let's have a look at the results. The following graph shows you the choice share of autonomous products as a function of the 2 conditions, low and high Protestant work ethic. And as you can see, about 62% of consumers chose the autonomous product in the low Protestant work ethic condition. But at the same time, only about 42% chose the autonomous product in the high PWE condition. So in other words, there was a drop of about 20 percentage points when a high Protestant work ethic was induced. And these results are robust when we control for things like identity relevance of the task. So overall, this study basically establishes causality for the negative main effect of Protestant work ethic on autonomous product adoption. The final study aims to provide an effective intervention for firms to overcome the barrier of a high Protestant work ethic. And the design of this study was inspired by an advertisement of Vorwerk, or more specifically Thermomix, which promises its users that by using this smart cooking machine, one gains more family time. Inspired by this advertisement, we conducted a 2x2 lab experiment in which we manipulated the Protestant work ethic in line with study 2 and whether there is a meaningful task substitute. More specifically, in the salient condition, we highlighted to consumers that by using the autonomous product, one gains time, and that this time can be used for more meaningful things, such as spending time with one's family. The results show that, first of all, in the control condition, we replicate the effects of the previous study. In that case, a high Protestant work ethic basically reduces the choice share of autonomous product. However, in the salient condition, this effect reverses. Here we find that actually the people with a high Protestant work ethic tend towards choosing the autonomous product more often. So overall, these findings suggest an effective intervention for firms to increase the adoption of autonomous products, even for those who value effort and hard work. Right, so what have we learned? In terms of theoretical contributions, we contribute to research in management on the acceptance of technologies by showing that the Protestant work ethic influences the adoption of new technologies. We also contribute to research in psychology on meaningfulness by showing that the Protestant work ethic seems to be an antecedent of meaning. And finally, we contribute to research in marketing on task delegation by showing that there are boundaries when it comes to the delegation of tasks to technology. In terms of practical implications, we've shown that there is one specific way to overcome the barrier of high Protestant work ethic, namely by providing a meaningful task substitute. Our findings also imply that special measures need to be taken into account in countries with a high Protestant work ethic. And finally, I'd argue that new technologies should be designed in a way that they provide meaning to consumers.